Today I'm here at Ibew, Local 196 in Huntley, Illinois. I'll be meeting with Mike, who is a lineman union representative. We're going to be talking all about what it means to be a lineman, how to even get into a union as a lineman, and what it takes. My name is Carson DeFelice, and this is Behind the Job. So welcome to the podcast. Thanks for coming on. Why don't you introduce yourself and tell me what you do?
Yeah, thanks for having me. So my name is Mike Cassidy. I'm currently an assistant business manager here at Ibew, Local 196. So I am a rep and work directly for the union hall. But by trade, I'm a journeyman lineman. So came up through the ranks through our local, got into an apprenticeship, topped out as a journeyman lineman. So that's what I do by trade, and that's my fallback. But lucky enough to work here at the union hall currently.
That's awesome. So how long have you been in this union for?
I joined this union in 2014, so approximately 11 years now.
Okay. Take me through how you started and kind of how you got into this trade.
Yeah, so
right
I actually had a completely different career path to start with, but I did have some family and other people that were in this trade. And my dad was in the trade, but was not a journeyman lineman. So I knew it existed, I knew it was here. And when I chose to change career paths, I came to the hall and tried to get a job. I had my CDL, a commercial driver's license, so was able to get on starting as a, what we call a groundman truck driver in our trade, but essentially you can think of it like a laborer type position that holds a CDL and can drive big equipment. So just got in and started to kind of work my way up through the ranks, learned about the union, learned about what other opportunities there are, and then was able to apply to the apprenticeship like everybody has to do. Got accepted, did my apprenticeship, and then, once I was topped out, then I was a journeyman lineman, not looking back.
That's awesome. Yeah, linemen are kind of, kind of a secret in the trades, would you say? It's kind of, the amount of power lines you see on the road, and I feel like not many people know about this industry quite well.
Yeah, I think you're right. People that do kind of know about the industry, they only see like the power company, right? It's the face of it that's on their power bill or whatever else. So they don't even know that there's a whole nother world of the contracting side of it, which is what we do. It's kind of a little hidden gem. A lot of the other building trades in general, they advertise better. They're all linked together. So a lot of times if somebody knows about one, then they find out about the others, where we're kind of separate from the building trades. So we're just out in our own little island kind of.
Gotcha. Yeah. How many districts does your union have?
So we're a little bit different in the fact that we don't call them districts. So there's I think there's like almost 3,000 locals in the country, a lot of which are actually considered inside locals. So they would be inside electricians. They essentially go from the meter in on the building, and our work is all from the electric meter out on the power lines. Cool. So we're somewhere in the piece of that 3,000-ish locals across the country, but we cover the country nationwide. So right here in Northern Illinois, in the Chicagoland area, there's only two. So Local 9 covers 4 counties in the greater Chicago area. And then Local 196, we have 14 counties that cover the rest of Northern Illinois, all of ComEd property.
Oh, cool. Where would you say is the best place to be as a lineman? Do you think the Midwest is a really good spot?
So
South?
Illinois actually specifically, and even more specifically Northern Illinois, we're sitting in a really good spot, in my opinion. Like them or hate them, obviously I'm sure you can understand where I stand, but union-wise, Northern Illinois is great. It's a very strong union area. Illinois in general is a very strong union state. But we don't have non-union contractors that we have competition from. The power companies here are all. So we negotiate really good wages. We've got, if I'm just guessing offhand, don't hold me to this, but probably top 3 wages in the country right here in Northern Illinois. And that union strength really, allows us to do that, along with, cost of living. There's a lot of that plays in. So yeah, it is a little bit more expensive to live here than some places, but I think here we have a great balance of the cost of living not necessarily being in the Chicago, ball field, but we're still seeing those higher wages for cost of living.
Yeah. So if you're down south, if you're out west, if you're out east, how can it look different over there? Are there more non-union areas over there?
Yeah, so if you go kind of south, southeast, there are much bigger non-union companies that are kind of controlling the work, and then some of the union contractors are scratching, trying to fight and claw their way in. You know, a lot of the non-union contractors, they aren't paying the benefits, the retirement, the insurance like union contractors are paying, and we have negotiated into our wages, so they're able to kind of undercut some of that stuff and win some of the work that way. But, you know, there are really, really good, strong union areas. You know, the whole state of California is really good. In the Northeast, North Central, you know, obviously Midwest here is really good too.
So take me through a typical day, because you guys don't just do work on the power lines, you also inspect, right? You also drive around and do the maintenance on all of them. What can a day in the life look like?
Yeah, so it can really depend on the utility or the customer that has it. So here locally, ComEd keeps a lot of their inspection stuff kind of in-house, but there are power companies across the U.S. that do, they will hire contractors specifically to do some of the inspecting, and so journeyman linemen do typically do that work. But we, you know, here, it can really vary as to what type of work you do. Some companies you can go to, you would do all the different types of work, you know, in any given month or whatever maybe. Other companies that kind of, they might separate their divisions and have certain divisions doing it. So for instance, you might have, you know, like underground distribution type stuff, overhead distribution. You could have overhead transmission. So it's really a very wide range of what we do. And a typical day would be, you know, you probably are leaving your house before the sun comes up. You're driving anywhere from 30 minutes to an hour and 30 minutes to get to where you show up, because our jurisdiction can be so big.
Right.
And then you're going to do that on your own time. Get to your show up, and then that's when your day will start, and you'll typically get into a company truck. Then at that point, get your work assignment for the day, if it's not a big job and you know already knew what you were doing from the day before, and then you're going to go out and perform that work, whether it be, like I said, you know, underground distribution, doing, you know, fixing, repairing stuff that's broken. You know, we have contractors that have pieces of work that are only fixing broken or outdated underground cables. They go out, they find them, they have to troubleshoot, they have to locate them, figure out where the bad spots are, dig it up, and then work on it.
You guys do the drilling too?
Yeah, so we do underground directional drilling. So that's not the classifications that we have that do that work aren't journeymen typically. We've got a lot of heavy equipment operators and groundmen, truck drivers. So a lot of people, that's where they actually get their start in this trade.
Okay.
They find their way in, and they can then kind of build a reputation, because it is kind of a small little world that we live in, and reputation can be a lot. You can prove that you can show up on time ready to work, that you're not afraid to get dirty or run a shovel or do the types of things that it takes to be successful. And so then when they do decide they want to, you know, move up or continue to further their career and apply for an apprenticeship, now they've kind of got that, I guess for lack of a better term, you know, they've got that street cred that says like, hey, I can be here every day, I can be here on time, I can be drug free, I can drive, you know, commercial vehicles and operate equipment or whatever the case might be. And then so they can, you know, hopefully rank higher on that apprenticeship list.
So how does a typical journeyman go through the ranks? Would you say a lot of them start as a driller?
So there's a couple different paths. And I would say the majority probably start in that laborer, operator type role, okay, and then work their way up from there, because of the fact that you can then, you know, you've already proven that you want to do the work, you can do the work. But we definitely have other people that just got in essentially right off the street, where they just applied directly to the apprenticeship. You know, maybe they were working retail or and make it up, any career really, and beforehand, and then they saw the application process open, they applied, they were able to get in and go through that way. So it's definitely not impossible to do that route either.
Mm-hmm. What does it look like for a person right out of high school? What do you recommend them do? Let's say they really are interested in this trade. How would you suggest them getting into it?
Get their CDL.
Okay, first
and foremost, okay, right out of the gate, especially for graduates from high school. Typically don't have the responsibilities yet that you need a paycheck coming in. Federal motor carriers really kind of threw a wrench in everything by requiring that you go through an accredited school. You used to be able to maybe borrow your buddy's farm truck semi and learn, and then just go down to the DMV and take your test and get your CDL. You could do that on your own time, nights, weekends, whatever, whenever. Maybe you grew up driving them and you didn't even need any practice and you could just go do it. But once the federal motor carriers made the changes, now you have to go spend 160 hours at an accredited driving school to get that CDL. So some people take that time and they just take a month off and they just do a month straight of 8-hour days and they go get it done. Some people grind it out for 6 months at a time, going nights and weekends whenever they can fit it in. So for a fresh graduate, I would say, if you're able to stay at home or rent free or whatever, absolutely just make that a priority and get the CDL, because nobody would regret it. Not only that, not just this trade, any career. I mean, the CDL itself gives you so many opportunities for other careers.
And then once they get their CDL, what do you recommend them do next?
So then you can literally just walk in our front door and ask to sign our books, and you would sign on to what we call Book 4. It's essentially kind of a waiting list. So as contractors call us needing manpower, if we don't have members that are off that we can fill those jobs with, we go to what we call Book 4, that waiting list, and we can fill those jobs based off that. So if somebody has experience operating equipment or working construction in the past, they might be somebody that stands out from somebody else. So those skills could help, but ultimately it's just, come in here and then keep an eye. We post our jobs online so people could see that. Keep an eye on that and apply for those jobs. But definitely attempting to get one of those jobs at an entry-level position, because then not only are you building some experience in the trade and building a reputation, but you're much more in tune. You're going to be coming to union meetings. You're going to be hearing about when the apprenticeship would open up. You're going to see it on the website or social media. So you're going to really kind of have your finger on the pulse of what's happening in the local and when that might be happening and when you can apply.
So you'd recommend them have some patience.
It is not an overnight game.
Right.
Yeah, absolutely. Patience is key. We typically only open our apprenticeship once a year, unless work is booming and we've pulled them off. But we usually have anywhere from like 150 to 300 applicants for our apprenticeship each year. So we don't usually need to open it more than once. And then we pull off that list as needed based on workload. But even once you apply and you get on the list, then there's other steps that have to take place. And those take time. It takes months in between each of those steps. So
what's the likelihood of somebody out of high school, no experience, let's say they worked at a sandwich shop or something, is it likely that they could get in, or do you think a couple years?
It's not unheard of. Okay. But again, it's, you're going to go and you're going to sit in front, let's say you hit the application process when it opens, you submit your application, and then you go straight from the sandwich shop to your apprenticeship interview. It's going to be, did you get your CD? Do you have your CDL? Have you shown that you can even do that? How do you hold yourself in that interview? It's a fairly short interview with fairly simple questions. So it's a lot about body language, confidence, just how you conduct yourself within that interview of a room full of journeyman linemen. Everybody's done it. Everybody's been there. So they kind of see what it takes. Is it necessarily a perfect process? Is there possibly people that have slipped through the cracks that could have been great candidates? Yeah. Is there people that made it through that weren't good candidates? Sure. Mm-hmm. But I think that's with any career, honestly.
Yeah, but it's a little intimidating to
Yeah.
stand in front of those union guys. But
yeah.
Interesting. So what do the unions like to look for? And do they like to see a bachelor's degree? Do they like to see a trade school? Do they like to see just experience?
Yeah, honestly, I would say experience probably goes a lot further than any of the college degrees or trade schools. Okay. There are even some schools across the country that are specific to linemen. They're like a lineman college that people can go to. And to be honest with you, I would say, while it's not a horrible thing, if you want to spend the $20,000 or $30,000 that it would take to go for, they're like 15-week schools, I think you'd be better off to just grind it out and try to get in entry level and get a job and get the experience. Or, we've got some people that, are able to, it's a little bit easier maybe sometimes to get hired on with non-union companies. And Nothing the union likes more than stripping people from the non-union. So, but it's just a great way to get experience. So any way to really get that experience, to be able to build the knowledge and the be able to prove that you can do the work. I think that goes the furthest. Yeah.
Yeah. Interesting.
Yeah. But just showing that you're willing to do the work, it's really easy to say, oh yeah, I'm going to work on my CDL, or I'm going to get it, I'll have it. Yeah. It's really easy to say that versus somebody that spent the time, went and got it, has extra certs to go with it, and can show that I'm going to do what it takes to get it done.
And what is that training process like? So high schooler, after high school, he gets hired on, he has a CDL. What is that apprenticeship phase going to look like? How long?
So the apprenticeship is, they call it about a 3.5 year apprenticeship, but it's 7,000 hours. So that's where they get the 3.5 years from. So if you're working 40 hours a week, roughly 3.5 years. If you're working some overtime, it can be done in a little bit less time, but they do kind of hold that down. And, I think a lot of the trades, if not all of them, what we're extremely proud of is it's earn while you learn. So you're not paying up front. There's typically no out-of-pocket costs. You're on the job earning money while you're learning how to do it and furthering your career. So you're going to be on a crew, specifically speaking to a lineman, you're going to be on a crew right next to journeyman lineman. That's who's teaching you. You've got a foreman that's a journeyman lineman, and then a journeyman lineman on the crew that you're working with in the bucket. And then we have where we go to school once a month on a Saturday. So one Saturday a month, you'll go for 8 hours a day, and we go to our training center and we learn about like the classroom piece of it. There's some field stuff, practical things that we're able to do there in a controlled environment, but you're learning a lot more of the intricate details and the how and why versus just out doing the job, getting it done, learning. On the job, you learn the efficient ways to do it, the inefficient ways, by accident, but you're learning the how, and then, come to school and you learn the why.
Yeah. So a typical day starts at, did you say like 7, 8?
So it depends on the contractor. Some, they vary, but typically most of them, it's either 6:30 or 7 is when they start their days.
And when would they usually get out for?
10-hour days. Most of our contractors work 10-hour days. Some work 8-hour days. But we have aspects of work where, like on transmission, those are the much larger towers that you'll see like going down the middle of a cornfield or whatever. That transmits electricity long distances across the country. Those projects are typically a little bit different and have a lot of overtime. So they'll work maybe 12 hours a day or maybe 10 hours a day, but more days per week. So I would say, it's one of those things that's hard because in this trade, it feels like a grind because you leave early in the morning and you're home later at night. You're not typically there to get your kids off the school bus each day, So, for people with family, it's definitely doable. I had a family when I got started, but you got to have a support system around you if that's the case. If you're the sole provider for getting the daycare done and, being there with the kids and stuff, it makes it a lot more difficult because of the hours that it takes.
So what age would you say is the best to get into this?
And honestly, that's pretty wide open. There have been apprentices that started day one that were in their late 40s. There is some physicality to it. So I do think, younger, more in shape people probably are the typical audience that's applying. Yeah, 20s. I was in my late 20s and I was one of the older people in my class at that time. But it's not uncommon to have people in the mid, late 20s, even early 30s. That's not uncommon at all. We do see a lot of early 20s, some late teens. But one of the problems with that is you can't actually drive your CDL across state lines until you're 21.
Okay.
So while it's perfectly fine and companies adjust to that, and a lot of people haven't figured out exactly what they want to do at that age yet. But man, when we see some of these guys come through and they get on and they're 18 years old and they start out right, they get a great career early on and they retire with a lot of money and, great retirements. So.
And what are some of why should a young person look into this trade as a great lucrative career? What are the upsides? The possibilities honestly are endless. There's a piece of me that wishes that I would have gotten started earlier.
because of the flexibility. So I could literally take my journeyman lineman ticket and I could go to any state in the country tomorrow and walk in and potentially have a job. If the workload is there, you can walk in the door and walk right out with a job. So the opportunity for travel, to see the state, you're not locked down to anything. The options are just kind of endless there. So that within itself, if you were bored of a place, it's not, oh, I'm locked down to this company, or, in the corporate world, I've got to ask for a transfer or whatever. If you know of another place that's got work, you can literally quit, go to that hall, sign the books, go out to work. And then just the room for growth within, a certain company. If you did want to stay put, you can work your way up from a journeyman lineman to a foreman to possibly even a GF who's running multiple crews, to even then something on the management side of like superintendent or bidding work or whatever that might look like for each individual. But there's just a lot of room for growth and a lot of ways to challenge. Plenty of different avenues of getting, becoming a specialty in different pieces of the work.
Yeah.
So I think it's cool because I don't think there's any way to really get bored doing it. There's just too many different options of what you could do as a journeyman lineman.
So you're always learning every day, or
always
something.
Without a doubt. Yeah.
That's awesome.
Always learning, and if you are bored, you could choose something else and go somewhere and learn something that you never even really done in your career.
So what do typical unions pay those apprentices? What can a kid out of high school make?
So if I'm not mistaken, ours starts out right now at 65% of journeyman lineman wage. So I think day one individuals are making, as a first step apprentice, I think they're making about $35 an hour. That's on the check, so none of their benefits are taken out of that. All of our wage package is all negotiated in addition to that. So all their health insurance, their retirement, their training, the training fund that's negotiated in, all that is a part of a greater wage package. So that $35 an hour is what they're actually taking.
So they start at $35 an hour.
Yep.
That's pretty
and then
good.
work up through there. So every 6 months, our apprenticeship is broken down into 6-month increments. So every 6 months, they'll get a 5% raise once they complete those steps, have their appropriate bookwork done, have gotten enough on-job hours. Then at that 6-month mark, they would jump up to the next one. So I think it's about a $2 to $2.50 an hour raise every 6 months until you top out. And a journeyman lineman wage right now is $63.08. So
that's a very good living.
Yeah.
Especially when you don't need a degree or anything, you just need your CDL, and the rest is training.
The main goal is safety, and as long as everybody can remain safe on the job, then you can make little mistakes and everybody goes home. But it can be a very dangerous trade as well. That's why the apprenticeship is so important. Well, there are a lot of rules and regulations on what you can and can't do, and who you have to be with and being observed by, because we are talking about high voltage electricity. Typical distribution lines on the ComEd system are over 7,000 volts. So people have lost their lives, and it can be dangerous, and that's why it's not for everybody, and that's why the wages can be so lucrative, is just because it's 140 feet in the air with really high voltage electricity. Like that's not for everybody.
What else is there that somebody should look out for before joining this career? So the heights, the weather's a big issue, right? High winds.
Yeah. So the weather, are you okay with being cold? Are you okay with being hot? Because all of our work is outside, right? Are you okay with being dirty? Because it's underground and it's in the mud. And even if it's not underground, you got to dig holes to put poles in. So you're bringing the mud up to you. Just ready to work with your hands. Like there's definitely a level of physicality with what we do. And just be dependable and work hard. There's not a lot of contractors that like to hear a lot of excuses for why you can't come to work or why you can't get the job done. And sometimes that's tough for people to realize.
So what skill set does somebody need coming out of high school? What should they have? What's good for them to carry on to this trade?
I think the ability to work with their hands, some sort of mechanical ability, and not afraid of the physicality of our trade, I think would be some of the best skills that they could have.
So being able to work with their hands, doing work under their car, even electric work, would you say that's, I guess it's kind of dangerous, but
Yeah, I mean, you can do it at your house, and you can do it in a safe manner too. I mean, the internet is a magical thing. You can learn a lot of stuff on there. So everybody's got electricity in their house, and could at least get some basic understanding of what that looks like. Not everybody's got a handyman dad that teaches them, but it just depends on how bad do you want to learn. What do you want to learn? You could find it on the internet and learn certain stuff, or even just reading books on electrical theory as well. That would definitely could be a benefit to somebody.
And there are a lot of criticisms that my generation, kids that are 20 years old, under 20, that we get for not working hard, not wanting to work. Have you seen that in this trade? Have you seen that with the applicants?
So we typically get a pretty large pool of applicants to choose from. So I would say we haven't necessarily. We're able to kind of pick through and find ones that are willing to work, and that's another reason why I say it can be so beneficial to get into the trade first and prove that you can do the work, and prove that you can show up and be reliable and not afraid to be the first one to grab the shovel or get dirty or do the work. That's why typically the apprenticeship committees, they like to take those individuals that have already shown that they can do that. So we've got brand new apprentices that have started. We've got some that are 19, 20 years old, and they're some of the hardest working people on the job. So I don't necessarily think it's a generational thing. I think there's definitely people that are willing to work. It's just a matter of if you're willing or not.
Yeah, and if those criticisms are true, it's you don't have as much competition anyway. So
yeah, exactly. You're going to stand out in a pool of other people if you're the one that's willing to work and show up and grind it out. Then you're definitely going to stand out.
Yeah. What does overtime look like in this trade?
It depends. It can ebb and flow. Like when I came through my apprenticeship, there was a 3-year period where we worked, mostly 50-hour weeks. There was definitely a lot more 50-hour weeks than just straight 40-hour weeks. There are storm restoration opportunities. When the wind blows, it's the ice storms or tornadoes come through in the summertime and tear down power lines. Linemen are the ones that are putting it back together. Typically those notifications they're not too far in advance, so it's usually pack a bag, we're leaving in the morning, and it could be right here in your own backyard, or it could be halfway across the country, in New York or Florida or wherever else.
And you've seen your guys go all the way down there too, down south?
Yeah, absolutely. I've done it myself, like multiple different hurricanes down in Florida or Louisiana or wherever for 2-3 weeks or more. And you're working 16 hours a day, 7 days a week when you're doing that. So they're long days. It's hot. You gotta have the determination to do it and be there. If you don't want to do the work and you don't want to put in the hours, then it's just going to be miserable and it's never going to be successful. You got to realize, and people have to realize when they're going to start, that you got to start at the bottom. Everybody started at the bottom. Everybody had the shovel in their hand. Everybody was the lowest guy down there, probably getting yelled at a little bit, expected to work harder than everybody else. But if you're not ready and willing to start at the bottom and work your way up, it's not going to be very successful.
So you shouldn't want to go in this industry. You can make a lot of money, but that shouldn't be a driving factor in the beginning.
100%.
Yeah. How many unions are there versus non-union lineman jobs, would you say? About 50-50?
Possibly, if you're talking nationwide. I don't know the exact numbers on that. I do know that non-union line companies probably outnumber the union ones in the South. There's some very large non-union companies, but at the same time, there are states where it's like here, where it's just all union. There aren't any non-union companies doing line work. So yeah, it's definitely divided. I don't know if it's equal or not, one way or the other, but divided for sure.
And what are the differences, the main differences that a kid would want to know about before getting in? Maybe he's thinking about, should I go union, should I go non-union?
So in my position, sitting in the seat that I sit in, I don't think there's any comparison to the two. Safety, money, benefits. We hear a lot of horror stories about non-union, and people that should not be in the positions that they're in with high voltage electricity doing the things that they're doing because they're just not properly trained yet. They just haven't gained the knowledge. They haven't gotten the training based on what they're doing, and people get hurt or killed from that. Our contracts that we negotiate, our collective bargaining agreements, the wages, the benefits, all that stuff's negotiated in there. So all the companies are held to the same standard. They're on a level playing field, and you're going to get the same benefits depending on which contractor you go to. It doesn't matter. So.
Mm-hmm. Interesting. So when we were talking about the weather and those types of jobs down south that you might have to go to, would you say that being a lineman, because a lot of jobs in the trades are focused mainly on how the economy is doing, that's a driving factor. Would you say more of the lineman work is more driven for the weather conditions and is about?
So weather does play a big role in it. I would say the economy does drive some of what we do, but at the same time, everybody needs power, right? So it doesn't matter if they're building roads or they're expanding stuff, like power. The power lines are there, and everybody needs power every day, going on and on and on. So while the economy and infrastructure builds and things like that can make the work boom, it definitely doesn't live or rely solely on that. And then, yeah, the weather patterns can change it dramatically as well, because there's some times where it just seems like the storms are relentless and they won't let up, and it's just you go from one storm to another to another to another. And you just keep going. You got heat-related issues in the summertime if it's really hot. You've got ice-related stuff in the wintertime, high winds in the spring and the fall. So, yeah, the weather can definitely affect the workload quite a bit.
And what else would you warn somebody about before getting into this trade as a lineman?
Be ready to be flexible. Job sites change, work hours change, storms hit last minute. You definitely have to be flexible in your mindset of when and where you're going to work.
Mm-hmm. So the young person that is looking to have a family and have a stable job and have a house, in one area, get to go home every day, it's doable, but you have to be flexible, like what you said.
Yeah, absolutely. It's definitely doable. A lot of people do it every day. But sometimes work does change, workload changes, and it will force you to possibly go on the road for short periods of time. The great part about it is if you do have a family and you're looking to be, to provide and have a secure livelihood, you can have that if you're willing to travel for it, or you're willing to do what it takes, because you can, go live out of a hotel for a couple weeks or a couple months at a time to follow the work around the country. So you can keep that paycheck coming in. You can come home on the weekends if you're close enough, kind of a thing. Some people drive, they go and get jobs that are almost a couple hours away, and they drive it every day so that they can be home in their own bed. But, it does change. So as long as you're willing to be flexible and go where the work is, you can have a very successful career and have very little downtime.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
That's really cool. Do you have any good stories about some young guy on the job or some new guy coming on?
Yeah, we've got a lot of stories. I remember one of the guys that I graduated climbing school with. He went to a different job, and he was on a job where the insulators, which keep the energized parts away from the de-energized parts, they're made of glass, and the dirt can affect their ability to operate, do their job essentially. And somebody told him to go clean that glass, go wipe the glass off, and instead of wiping off the glass insulators, because he was brand new, he didn't know, he was over there scrubbing the glass in the windshield of the crane. So they're like, what's he doing? Get him off there, get it. So, while we've all had those moments, we're the new guy, we don't know, it's okay to mess up,
What are the common mistakes you see those guys that just get in the job? What do you see them make usually?
Common mistakes. Usually, I would say probably like damaging equipment. I think,
Okay.
not a lot of experience in their drive time. I've accidentally run over chainsaws. I hit a truck. I had a brand new pickup that had 6 miles on it, and I did like $7,000 worth of damage to it. So yeah, I would say probably damage to equipment, damage to vehicles, stuff like that.
That's the benefit of a union, though. There's a lot of resources that they can provide you, even if you bust something.
We've got there are protections in place or things that can be done to help out, but it's part of the training, the learning process. As long as you weren't being negligent in what you were doing, I think usually everybody understands. They've been there too.
Yeah. Well, thanks for coming on the podcast.
Yeah,
really appreciate it.
Thanks for having me.
Do you have anything else you'd like to share about your union or anything about the trade?
Yeah, well, thanks for having me. It's been great to kind of talk about what we do and share. I just think in general we're a pretty proud group of individuals. I think everybody that I know, everybody that does this type of work really likes what they do. They're very proud of how they can build something and drive down the road 10, 20 years later and see that and show it to your kids or whatever else. So it's just cool to kind of spread that and give some other people some knowledge about what we do.
That's awesome. I wanted to give a big thank you to Mike and Ibew Local 196 for wanting to do this, and thank you to all who watched. If you or anyone you know wants to be on this podcast, my email is in the description below. Thank you.